there was a poll on our message board on Tuesday, and I'm looking at it right now, and it says, would Michigan 2023 beat Georgia, the 2021 team that Michigan lost to quite handily in the Orange Bowl? And 56.8% of Michigan fans, diehard Michigan fans, out of about over 300 votes, say that Georgia would have won that game. And then you look at ESPN as a ranking that came out before this year's college football playoff of the top teams in the CFP era. And actually, they have 2022 Georgia ranked ahead of 2021, number 3 and number 5, respectively. The 2020 Alabama team, which was loaded at 1, 2019 LSU is number 2. I do wonder when they do that next December where that Michigan team, where this last Michigan team will have ranked among all college football playoff teams or teams of all time. I mean, there are only I think 4 that went 15-0 during that era because most of them had the loss. Even 2021 Georgia loses that game in the SEC championship to Alabama. So, yeah, AB, you're right. Like, it'll just be interesting. I mean, we can have one perspective on it. It'll be interesting to see what others feel like with that Michigan team. But, I mean, it is one of probably the best teams, I would say, in college football history. Not just
Michigan. we aren't necessarily unbiased when it comes to that, right? So
we're in a bubble, right? You watch one team
exactly.
Most of the time.
But I will say that the 2021 Georgia football team was probably the best college football team that I've ever seen, honestly. And that's saying something, right? Given what we've seen these last several years and all the great Alabama teams there were. So the high-end talent on that team was just absolutely sick. And the way they just bullied Michigan and pushed them around, to me, was they were flat out dominant. So, and they did lose a game that year, but great teams tend to lose ball games every now and then. That's why I picked Michigan to lose a game before the season. Of course, I did pick them during the week to beat Penn State. And, you don't know. I mean, like, for example, we can make our predictions now, and we will in the football preview about what we expect to happen in the fall. But there are so many things that can change between now and then. Like I would, right now, if I say if Michigan gets a decent quarterback in the portal, or if somebody emerges unexpectedly, in my opinion, they're 9-3 and pushing for a playoff spot, as a floor. I think the defense is that good. And everybody talks about the schedule. A lot of those teams still have to come to Michigan, right? Have to come to Ann Arbor and play, which is not easy. Everybody's looking at Texas as a loss. I'm not seeing that one as a loss just yet. I can't wait to see that game. Got to get a quarterback, though, fellas. That's where it starts. But I think that offensive line's going to be good. Anyway, I kind of got off on a tangent there, but I am excited to see. I am excited to see what they do this spring. I know we're going to be talking about that in a minute.
Yeah, just again, I think the last thing I would say is the passage of time. It's going to be really interesting to see, who ends up where, who does what in the NFL. They have those 18 guys that were at the combine. I don't think it's crazy to think that 16 or 17 of them could get drafted, if not all of them. So, I mean, the further and further you get away from it, like you go back and look at that 2001 Miami team. I mean, you had Willis McGahee, you had Clinton Portis, you had Frank Gore. That's just your running back room. You go all over the defense. You had Ed Reed, you had Sean Taylor, you had Vince Wilfork. If we look back on this team 5-10 years from now, and Michigan has that level of guys in the NFL in terms of guys that make Pro Bowls, guys that win Super Bowls, it's going to add another layer to the mystique of having all that talent in the room at the same time. And really, the same goes for the coaching staff too, given that Harbaugh's back in the NFL, and you have guys sprinkled throughout the league now. So I think the passage of time is going to be very kind to how this Michigan team is viewed, and people might also, yearn for the days where it was that good. So we'll see what happens.
What would you guys what would a point spread be for the 2021 Georgia team that Michigan played against 2023 Michigan on a neutral field?
On a neutral field, Georgia by 4, maybe 3.
I was leaning like 4.5.
Yeah.
3.5, 4.5, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Which honestly, if they had played Georgia this year, I don't think that would have been that crazy of a point spread, at least in terms of what, Vegas was throwing out there. So, but I guess we'll never know because they didn't make it. So,
yeah. And I'll say this, Michigan beat an Alabama team that wasn't great. They still had elite players all over the place, but we saw from the get-go in that game that Michigan defense was going to be a handful for Alabama. And that game went back and forth. It's not like Michigan dominated. It's not like Alabama dominated. That was a pretty damn even game that could have gone either way. Both teams made their mistakes. So, and that Alabama team certainly was not 2021 Georgia, not even close, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I would even give Michigan even more credit and say that was a great Alabama team. They went undefeated in the SEC. They won the SEC. And
By their
look,
standards, Clay, is what I'm getting at. They were a very, very good team, but by their standards, that was not a great Alabama team.
yeah, I guess. I mean, if great is just winning it all, then maybe for them. But I mean, man, that was a great team. It was the second most talented team on paper in college football history in terms of recruiting rankings. So I would actually put Michigan against Georgia 2021. Not that it matters, closer at maybe Georgia -1 or something like that. But that offense was not all that good throughout the year. They had more dogs than Michigan. That Michigan defense in 2021, really, when you look back at the talent, I mean, they upgraded so much at almost every position over a 2-year span by the next time they played an SEC power like that. They knew what to do. They double team Aiden Hutchinson basically every time. I think it would have been different, but yeah, it would have been, now Michigan's in that rare era where you can compare champion to champion. And I guess at the end of the day, it's a great spot to be in for the 2023 team. That forever they have that, as Jim Harbaugh said, it's a walk that they can walk around with now as natty champs.